Hey you, do you want to learn about imperfect competition? Well, you came to the right place. My name is Ryan Langsley and I'm here to teach you about 4.1 imperfectly competitive markets. So, what is an imperfect competitive market? And why are they imperfect? What do you think?
I think that the market is, I think the market is full of like capitalism, and I support it, but not really.
Like my friend here said, we have to go back to the definition of a perfectly competitive market. A perfectly competitive market has firms competing at low barriers of entry, and they sell at a price that is set by the equilibrium of the market.
Now, what do we mean when we say that there are barriers of entry? This means that there are barriers of entry for a new firm to enter a market, some of which include 1. High fixed and startup costs. For example, there's one electrical company because they provide electricity at the lowest cost. They're also known as a natural monopoly. 2. Geography or ownership of raw materials. And a good example of this is iron and raw meat. 3. There are legal barriers where governments issue patents to protect inventions. Types of imperfect competition. There are different kinds of imperfect competitions that are different from each other by the barriers of entry. So the first one we have is one that we're all familiar with, a monopoly. A monopoly typically dominates the industry and sells a product that's differentiated from everyone else. A really good example of this is Microsoft and Windows because they dominate the computer software market. These companies have extremely high barriers of entry. Next, we have an oligopoly, which is a market where a few large firms dominate the industry, which only consists of a handful of firms. They have pretty high barriers of entry as well. An example of this are car companies such as Toyota, Honda, and Hyundai. The third is a monopolistically competitive market, which have high amounts of sellers, but still differing products. They don't have as high barriers of entry as oligopolies or monopolies. A good example of these are food trucks, because there are many kinds of food that are being sold at the food trucks, but they're all different. Well, we know that airports have multiple airlines within them, and they're considered an oligopoly because they have high barriers of entry and resources. If you wanted to be part of this oligopoly, imagine how much money you would have to spend to reach that point. A lot! Therefore, that's why oligopolies have high barriers of entry.
Now to recap, we know that perfectly competitive markets are price takers, which means that they sell whatever price the consumers set it at. And the consumers can set that price by choosing how much they buy. And imperfectly competitive markets, on the other hand, are price makers, which means that they themselves influence the price of the goods that they are selling. To sell more, firms will lower the price.
I know I didn't warn anybody, but it's pop quiz time! Okay. What are 3 barriers of entry when it comes to entering a market? And I'll give you guys 30 seconds on the clock to do that. Ten seconds remaining. Okay, time's up. So unfortunately, you guys are wrong. The answer is high startup costs, geography or ownership of raw materials, and legal barriers. I know I didn't warn you guys again, but now we have a pop quiz too. Okay, what are the barriers of entry of a monopoly? That is the question. I'll give you another 30 seconds to complete this question. Ten seconds remaining. Time's up. Unfortunately, you guys are wrong again. It's high barriers of entry.
Now with that being said,
Now you all should be masters of 4.1 Imperfectly Competitive Market.